Welcome back to The Explainer. So, you've probably hired a contractor locally at some point, right? Even just down the street, it's a headache. You're dealing with endless text messages, sudden delays, surprise costs. Now, take that exact same headache and stretch it across, say, an entire continent. How in the world do you make sure your hard-earned cash doesn't just vanish into thin air? Today, we are diving deep into a highly structured approach that completely solves the ultimate remote project dilemma.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's talk about Riz. Riz is currently living and working over in Libya, but he's got this super relatable goal. He just wants to buy and install 4 quality doors for his mom's house in Boroboro Lira, which is all the way over in Uganda. That is a geographical gap of about 3,000 miles. He can't exactly just drive over on a Saturday morning with a coffee to check on the contractor's progress, right? He is entirely reliant on remote communication.
For someone in Riz's shoes, you basically hit a fork in the road with 2 totally different paradigms. On one side, you've got the old-school, traditional direct payment method, which, spoiler alert, is incredibly risky and stressful. But on the other side, there's a highly structured, milestone-based system. We're going to focus heavily today on what's known as the Bid Digest user journey, walking through exactly where things go wrong traditionally, and precisely how this new journey fixes the whole shebang.
Let's start by looking at Scenario 1, the risky way.
This high-risk route almost always kicks off super casually. Step 1 is just a simple search and inquiry, usually over WhatsApp. Riz finds a supplier and gets a quote. But then, very quickly, we slam right into Step 2, the trust decision. The supplier says, hey, I need money upfront to start buying materials. Riz, hoping for the best, jumps straight to Step 3 and fires off the cash directly via mobile money or a bank transfer.
Now hold on, I want to slow down and really emphasize this concept right here. It's called the breakpoint. It is the exact terrifying second Riz hits send on that transfer. In that one single moment, he literally loses all of his leverage. It results in zero control, zero verification, and absolutely zero guarantees. The power dynamic has totally shifted, and Riz is now completely at the mercy of a contractor 3,000 miles away.
And what follows that breakpoint? Usually, it's a massive cascade of anxiety. First, the excuses start piling up. I'm facing challenges, just give me a little more time. Then the quality drops, or worse, the supplier just straight up vanishes. The ultimate outcome here is that Riz either loses his funds entirely or, and this is agonizing, he actually has to pay a second time to hire someone else to fix the botched work.
When you operate this way, you lose control instantly. Getting your money back? Incredibly hard. The sheer distance just makes it way too easy to get exploited. But the absolute biggest takeaway here is simple. Hope is not a strategy. Crossing your fingers and praying a remote contractor is honest is just a guaranteed recipe for immense stress and financial loss.
Which brings us to Scenario 2, the Bid Digest user journey.
This is where we enter the smart way of doing things. The Bid Digest user journey builds a completely different reality for Riz, one that's actually built on structure, visibility, and accountability. It doesn't start with some random text message. Instead, Riz posts a formal request and gets matched with verified suppliers who have visible 5-star track records. From there, he selects the best supplier based on actual data, sets up a controlled payment, tracks the execution, and finally does a structured payment release.
Now here is the absolute game changer in the Bid Digest user journey. It's all about how the funds are handled. Yes, Riz deposits the money up front because he has to show he's a serious buyer. But those funds are not handed over to the supplier blindly. No way. They are held securely within the system. Materials have to be verified, delivery has to be confirmed, the work must actually be completed. Only then does the money move. So that terrifying breakpoint we talked about, completely eliminated.
The mechanics of this trust actually rely on a very specific payment milestone structure. It's a 40-40-20 split. Think about it like this. The system releases 40% of the funds, but only after the supplier confirms they have the exact right materials. Then, another 40% is released only upon actual delivery to the site, meaning those doors have physically arrived at the house. And finally, the system strategically holds back that last 20% until the installation is perfectly complete and verified with photos. It keeps the supplier motivated right down to the very last screw.
When you put these two approaches side by side, the contrast is just staggering. On one side, you have an anxiety-inducing cycle of search, agree, pay, and pray. The risk is sky high, and control is non-existent. But on the other side, the Bid Digest user journey gives us search, verify, control payment, confirm work, and release funds. The risk becomes extremely low, control remains super high, and Riz gets total peace of mind knowing his mom gets her doors and the supplier gets paid fairly.
Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to this one really powerful realization. Distance is not the problem. Lack of control is. You don't literally need to be standing in the same room as your contractor to get a job done right. You just need the proper milestone framework to ensure accountability. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? In our increasingly globalized world, how many other remote transactions are we just leaving up to hope that could be instantly solved with a little bit of structured control? Something to think about. Thanks for hanging out for this explainer, and we will see you next time.